Hey everyone, this is Mr. G, and I'm going to continue from where we left off in part 1, continuing with number 6, letter D, Unit 2, Lab 2, Script Variables, page 1. So in this challenge, we're supposed to build a reporter block named raise base to the power exponent. And the way it should work is that if I raise 2 to the power 3, I should report back 8. Or if I raise 2 to the power 5, I should report 32. Raise 3 to the power 4, 81. Raise 2 to the power 1 should return 2, or report 2. And also if I raise a base to the power 0, I should just return 1. So I'm going to check as always to make sure that it works as I expect. So what I'm going to do before I jump into Snap, I'm going to actually write it out. And I'm going to see if I can think through what the computer should be doing, or the way that I think it through. So when I go through raising a base to the power exponent, such as 2 to the power 3, what I'm doing is I'm actually multiplying 2 times 2 times 2. And let's see if we can find any patterns here. Or if I do, let's do one more. 3 to the power 4 is the same thing as doing 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. And we're going to see if we can figure out if there's like a pattern to what we're doing here. So first, how do I even answer this question? How do I even do the math myself in my head? Well, what I do is I look at 2 times 2, I multiply that, and that equals 4, and then I bring this one down and I multiply it by what's left, the next base. On the problem on the right, I'm doing 3 times 3, which equals 9, and then I bring down the next base, which equals 3, so now I have to do that math, and that's 27, and I'm left with one final base times 3 to get 81 as my answer. And on the left, I should get 8. 2 to the power 3 should report 8. So there's some things I'm doing in my head that maybe I can work out programmatically, that I can have the computer do as well. And if you think about it, if you think about what I'm doing, I'm basically setting like a temporary variable, or maybe a script variable, equal to base times base. And I'm doing that first. It appears that that's what I'm doing first. And then I'm doing some multiplication a few times. I'm repeating that a few times. I just have to figure out how many times I'm actually repeating that. So what I first do is in my head, I set a temporary variable, and I'm going to call it temp, and I'm setting it equal to the base times the base. And I just knocked off my first multiplication right here. So I just did the first multiplication. Now I have to repeat this how many more times? 1 and 2 times. So on the right, it's 2 times I have to repeat this. Oops, I shouldn't write the 2 like that because it's going to confuse you. But if you look over here on the red arrow that I'm drawing, I'm repeating this twice, 2 more times. And 2 happens to be the number 2 less than 4. So after I do the first multiplication, because remember, I'm doing this 1, 2, 3 times total. So I'm basically doing it power minus 1 times, but when I do it first, initially like this, then I only need to do it power minus 2 times left. Okay? I hope that's not too confusing, but if we look at the problem on the left, maybe it'll make a little bit more sense what I mean. So I have to do, in this problem on the left, I have to do 2 multiplications total. You can see the number of times signs that there are. Okay? When 2 happens to be, the 2 multiplications is 1 less than the exponent. Just like over here on the right, 3 multiplications is 1 less than the exponent 4. Okay, but if I create a temporary variable, then I only have to do it 1 more time on the left, which happens to be 2 less than the exponent. On the right, if I already multiply the first 2 bases by itself, then I have to repeat this 2 more times, which happens to be exponent minus 2 times. So I'm repeating that multiplication. All right, maybe it'll help out if I kind of write out what I'm doing here. So what I do in my head is I create a temporary variable and set it equal to the base times the base. Then I am multiplying what's left, that temporary variable, by the bases that are left, and I do that exponent minus 2 times. So what I mean by that is I'm going to repeat the following: exponent minus 2 times. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to I'm going to set a new temporary variable because I have to create a new variable basically in my head. Actually, in the problem on the left, I get to the answer immediately. But on the right, you see this 27? I basically create a new temporary variable that I'm going to multiply the base to. So I'm going to set a temporary variable equal to the temporary variable that I had before that came from up here, multiplied by the base. And that should work. In my head, like, this kind of makes sense. Now, maybe what we could do is we could just set a temporary variable equal to the base up here. Now that I'm looking at it, we could set a temporary variable equal to the base, and then instead of multiplying or repeating this exponent minus 2 times, we would just have to repeat it exponent minus 1 time. If we just do that, because then we would have to do the extra multiplication inside of the repeat. And that's actually probably cleaner and probably better looking. But just the way I thought about it now as I go through this, I just want to make sure that you guys see that even though I'm thinking about it a certain way, I'm always thinking about other ways to solve the same problem. It's just the way my brain works. And you guys should try to get into the habit of trying to look at it from a different angle. Especially if you get stuck or if you get frustrated, the best thing to do is basically delete everything and try it again and try it a different way. And hopefully that should help you guys out a little bit. Now, what we can do is let's start making this in Snap and see what we come up with. To build this reporter block, what we have to do is we have to make a block. So I'm going to right click in my scripting area, and I'm going to click make a block. And this is going to be an operator because we see that it's light green, and it's going to be a reporter, not a command. It's going to be a reporter because it's reporting back a certain value. So I'm going to name this reporter raise base to the power exponent. Now you'll notice that I just used the words as they're written over here on the right. And the reason I did that is because I can then click on the word and turn it into an input. So for example, base over here, I can click on it and make it an input. And I'm going to go one step further actually and turn this into a number input. So this should expect a number. And that's just me trying to maybe future-proof my future code. And exponent, I'm going to make an input, and I'm going to go one step further again and turn that into a number so that it expects a number when the person puts in a number. Now I have my base and my exponent. And what I did in the drawing, or the writing that I had, is I created a temporary variable, and I said it would be a perfect time to use a script variable. And I'm going to call it temporary, just like I did in the writing. And what I did was I set that value temporary equal to the base times the base. So first I'm going to do it the way that I thought it out, and then maybe I'm going to see about optimizing it. So I'm going to set that equal to the base times the base. And what I can do is just use the operator, the multiplication operator, and I set my temporary variable equal to that. And what I can do is, actually just to check to make sure that it's kind of working, let me report back temporary. So I'm going to apply that, I'm going to save it, and I'm going to drag the block over that I just created, and I'm going to try putting in the number 4. So I expect this to give me 16. 4 times 4, base times base, equals 16, and it does. If I do 5 times 5, or 5, raise 5 to the power blank, keep in mind that I'm not using exponent at all, so it shouldn't even be, it doesn't matter that it's empty. 5 times 5 should equal 25, and it does. So it looks like my block is working. My temporary variable is working, and it's able to report that temporary variable back to the person that called it. Okay, now let's think back to what I did. So I set a temporary variable equal to base times base. Then I repeated some multiplication a certain number of times. So I'm going to bring over my repeat block, and what I did was I repeated the multiplication exponent minus 2 times. So I'm going to drag that over, exponent, and I'm going to repeat this twice. And what I did was I kept updating that temporary variable by multiplying it to the base. And I do that this many times, exponent minus 2 times. So what I want is to set the temporary variable equal to the temporary variable. So I'm going to reset the temporary variable to the temporary variable times the base that came from before. Okay, so that should look like this. I'll bring over my multiplication, and I'm going to bring temporary times the base. So let's see if this works. I think this is what I thought about. This is the way I thought about it, and I thought this would work. So let me see if this works. So I'm going to report temporary, and I'm going to try out 2 to the power 3, and then 3 to the power 4, because I know what I should expect. I'll even try out 2 to the power 5, and I'll try out the rest. Why not? To test it. So I'm going to apply. I'm going to bring this over, and when I raise 2 to the power 3, it should return 8, and it does. Looks like it's working. When I raise 2 to the power 5, it should return or report 32, and it does. It works. When I raise 3 to the power 4, it should report 81, and it just happens to. So that's nice when it works. When I raise 2 to the power 1, it reports 4, and it's supposed to report 2. So we got a problem here. It looks like this multiplication, this doesn't work. And actually, I'm going to trace through this and try to figure out why it doesn't work. Because I expected it to say 2, and instead it says 4. So before I start changing things, I actually want to think through like the computer and figure out what the computer is doing. So the computer, when I put in 2 to the power 1, it's setting a temporary variable to 2 times 2. So that equals 2. And, 2 times 2, and that equals 4. What am I saying here? And then I'm going to repeat this exponent, which is 1 minus 2 times. So I'm going to repeat this negative 1 times. That doesn't really make sense. That's not going to work probably, or it's not going to do anything, I guess, because I'm repeating it a negative number of times. So basically all I'm doing is setting a temporary variable to the base times the base, which is 2 times 2, and it reports 4. And that's exactly what ends up happening. So what could I do to catch this or to fix this? Well, what I can do is that I can check to see if the person put in the exponent 1. And then if it does that, I'm just going to report back the base. Because anything to the 1th power is just that anything, the initial anything. So I can actually use an if. So I'm going to catch this right here. So if the person exponent equals 1, so let me just do that. So if the exponent, where is that, equals 1. So here's my equals. So if someone puts in an exponent that is equal to 1, all I'm going to report back is the base. I don't have to do any like calculation to it. I'm going to report, where's my report? I'm just going to report back the base. It doesn't matter what they put in, but anything to the 1th power is just going to be that anything. And otherwise, actually maybe I should use an else, if else. So let me bring that over, my if else, instead of this if. And I'm going to put that in here. And if exponent equals 1, let's just report back the base. Otherwise, let's do our calculations and see if it works. And at the end of all of this, if we do this repeat, we're going to report temporary. Now keep in mind, if exponent equals 1 and it reports the base, it's going to end the script right there. So it'll never reach report temporary. It should never reach this line over here unless exponent doesn't equal 1. Let's try this out. So 2 to the power 1 equals 2. Let's do 32,323 to the power 1 should equal 32,323. And that seems to be working correctly. Let me just go back and make sure the other ones work. 3 to the power 4. 3 to the power 4 should equal 81. It looks like it's working. 2 to the power 3. 2 to the power 3 should equal 8. 2 to the power 4 should equal 16. I think I just put that in. All right, that works correctly. And let's also make sure that it works for this case over here on the right. Raise 5 to the power 0. 5 to the power 0 should return 1, and it returns 25. So we got another problem here. So let's go back into our code, and let's see if we can catch that case, if we can make sure that we account for that. So it looks like we're going to use another else if, or if. Well, I can't even speak right now. Looks like we're going to check to see if the exponent equals 0, and if it does, we're just going to report back 1. So let's see. Where can I look for that? How about inside of this else? Inside of this else, I'm going to use another if else. So if the exponent equals 1, if the exponent equals 1, oh sorry, 0, not 1, but 0, if the exponent equals 0, then I'm just going to report back 1. Otherwise, I'm going to do my little repeat and do this whole calculation. Okay? So this kind of starting to look a little messy, but it looks like it makes sense. So at first I check if it's 1. If it is, I report the base. Else, if the exponent is 0, so I check to make sure if it's 0, or check to make sure that it isn't 0, but if it is, I'm going to report back 1. Otherwise, I'm going to do my whole little calculation, and then I'm going to report back that value for temporary. So let's see if this works. Let me apply this, and when we put 5 to the power 0, it should return 1, and it does. So that kind of works. That works the way we wanted it to. If I do 15 to the power 0, it should return 1, and it does. Anything to the power of 0 returns 1. Okay, and let me just go back and make sure that everything else still works correctly. Maybe the testing isn't so efficient here, but that's okay. We can test it manually for now. 3 to the power 4 equals 81. 2 to the power 1 equals 2. 43 to the power 1 should equal 43, and it looks like it's working. 43 to the power 0 should return or report 1, and it looks like it's working. So this is just one way of checking, or of doing this exponent reporter block thing, base to the power exponent reporter block. What I could do now, if this makes sense to you, that's great. But if you want, I'm just going to quickly optimize it a little bit, because I can see where I'm doing a little bit of like repetition or things that I don't need to do. It looks like I'm doing one extra, well, not an extra multiplication, but I'm doing my first multiplication outside of this repeat block, when I could probably do it right in here if I just remove this multiplication and I set my temporary variable equal to the base. Then, because I have to do another multiplication, I just took this one out, I have to bring it down to here, to the repeat. So I can do this exponent minus 1 times and set that temporary variable, which already equals base, to the temporary variables times the base. So base times base, basically, for the first one, and then temporary times base for the others. And it's going to repeat that exponent minus 1 times. So I think that should work. That might be a slight little optimization, or at least make it look a little bit better than having to repeat exponent minus 2 times, which someone might not understand, like why I'm doing that. But this one makes a little bit more sense, because this is the number of multiplication, the number of times I have to do a multiplication operation when I'm doing an exponent. Okay, let me just check to make sure that this still works. I'm going to apply it. 43 to the power 0, 2 to the power, let's see, 2 to the power 3 should equal 8. It still works. 2 to the power 5 should give me 81. Oh, sorry, 32. And that still works. 3 to the power 4 should give me 81, and it looks like that still works. So this is just one way. This is just one way of answering letter D. And I'm going to stop the video right here, and I'm going to continue with number 7 in part 3.